when you take your geography class, if you remember your geography class, you were told that there were 7 continents. There was one supercontinent at one time, Pangaea. And the largest continent in the world is Asia. Largest mountains, highest mountains in the world. And following that is the African continent, a continent that consists of 50 plus nations, has many different adjectives and monikers that describe the continent. It's been called the dark continent because of the color of the people on the continent, but also because of the unknown about the continent. And we could really say that the amount of unknown that we have about the continent of Africa, while it's less today, it's still a very unknown place. Specifically because we don't want to know. We live in a world where we just accept what other people say based on whatever credential they may have, whether the credential is valid or not, whether their opinion is valid or not. Well, I decided that I wanted to make the time to know about the continent from first-hand accounts, primary sources. So I started a series with a couple of people that I've had the opportunity to meet that have lived and were born on the continent, the African continent. So today's episode is going to focus on specifically Egypt, Nigeria, and Ghana. You're going to get insights and information from people who have first-hand accounts about the biases and other things that exist about Africa. Now, the thing that you have to understand, number one, is very important to me, is that Africa is a continent instead of a country. So it's far from monolithic, and it's important to understand that so we can respect what's there and who's there. Now, again, talking about that supercontinent Pangaea, the Africans that I will have the opportunity to converse with today are specifically in the country of Colombia. And so if you know about Pangaea, you know that Africa, the continent, and the South American continent were once attached to each other. And so there is a kinship, there's a relationship, there is a familial tie, so to speak, between the two, I believe. Not only through the slave trade, but also just historically, geographically, topographically. So while I know I went a little wordy for this, and I'm saying it in the intro, I do want you to understand that this is an important conversation to me, and I think it'll be an important conversation for you. So definitely reach out to the people in the conversation because they're open to talk and learn more about Africa, the continent. Let's go. And today on Voices, this is one that is in my blood. It's in the roots of who I am. Today, the focus is on the continent. Now, when I say the continent, some people can be confused, but the people that are in the know, when I talk about the continent, I'm talking about the continent of Africa. And I've been fortunate enough in my travels abroad to meet many people from the continent who have given me various ideas, information, and input about what the continent offers and why it's one of the richest places in the world. So today joining me is Max and Ibrahim. Now, these guys are fantastic guys. I've known them for a couple of years now, and I'm appreciative of them. So I wanted them to contribute and let the world know, to let the listeners know what Africa, the continent, has to offer, and specifically talk about their country and sort of their connection of their country to where they are right now. So no person can introduce themselves like themselves. So Ibrahim, I'll have you introduce yourself first and followed by Max. So welcome, gentlemen.
All right. Thank you very much, man. Really appreciate you having me on your podcast and everything. And it's a really good opportunity to talk about Africa. So definitely you're right. Africa is very diverse. Africa is 54 countries. Personally, let me start. My name is Ibrahim, just like you said. And Africa is 54 countries. I am from Egypt, which is in the northeast corner of Africa, okay? And it is basically an Arab-speaking country, Muslim majority, all right, with about 20 to 22%, I think, Christian, all right? We are basically between the Middle East and Africa. Obviously, we are an African country, but a lot of people think Egypt, oh, that's the Middle East, and they think this is a whole different region. And they don't connect that the Middle East is basically MENA region, which is Middle East, North Africa, right? So there are Egypt, Libya, Algeria, Tunisia, and Morocco in the north of Africa that are also Arab country, Middle Eastern countries. And the connect between the Middle East or the Arab countries and Africa is very, very deep rooted, because before we were Arab, we were always African. So a lot of people forget that. So let me just start with that piece of information, and then we will continue after Max introduces himself.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Max.
Oh man, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity also to be part of this podcast. Like you said, my name is Maxwell. You can call me Max for short. And I'm from Ghana. And as you may know, Ghana is it's a very small country in Africa. And it's been part of the African history and the African struggle throughout the centuries, And Ghana was basically the first sub-Saharan African country to gain independence, from the British. And I don't know if you're aware, when the Europeans came to Africa, they started colonizing most of the countries. So we became different in terms of language, in terms of culture, and every country is a bit different. And like my friend said, we got 54 countries in this continent, and I'm from the western part, and the western part is made up of 16 countries, right? And I hear a lot of people referring to Africa as a country. That's like a big, big continent, right? And it's one of the fastest growing continent too in the world. But sometimes when you listen to the news or you watch what's going on on the international scene, they portray Africa as the poorest continent, and the continent with a lot of diseases, a lot of wars going on. But when you get to the realities on the ground, you realize that it's absolutely different. These are like really good people. These are like people living their best lives, though we have struggles, but we have that kind of positivity. And Ghana has been part of the African history. Maybe subsequent talks, we're going to talk about the political struggle of the different African countries, especially the Ghana. And we led the struggle for independence, and we also helped other African nations to gain their independence as well. Like I said, we had our independence in 1957, and the British were literally controlling everything. They control the schools, they control the economic systems, they control the economy. So everything was basically managed by the British. But when the people became conscious of how powerful they can be by mobilizing, they actually started, fighting for what belongs to them. So yeah, that's what I can say for now. And I'll wait for your questions so I can answer more.
Oh, you're good, man. And I think it's excellent, because one of the things that I think is important is this perception that Africa is one thing. And especially since, and I'm being honest, like when they talk about like race, right? I'm an American, right? My father's Jamaican, and
Right.
people talk about race, and they talk about things along the lines of being black enough. Like, I don't know if you've paid any attention to sort of U.S. politics, but
Right.
for instance, there's sound bites where people say, for instance, the lady that has been nominated for the Democratic vice presidential
Yeah.
spot for the
Right.
Democrats, Senator Harris, for her, they said, well, she's not even really like black. And I'm like, I just look at it, because what I think, and I'm being honest, being a black American, I think that because the world is so westernized, and the most sort of public public in front of the camera people are Black Americans, that they think, and this is again just my generalized idea, but Black Americans think they own Blackness. And it's
Yeah.
funny because they call themselves African Americans, and I don't know if this is considered sort of a thing that is taboo, because I'm not insulting my people at all. I'm American and I'm proud to be American, but African American is a misnomer, for one, because many of the Americans that are in the United States, they don't have any roots. And I don't mean it to be insulting, but they don't have roots. Their roots is slavery. And that it's sort of a hodgepodge of just stuff thrown together where, yeah, you know, your people are from Africa, but where? Right. And then you have this whole, what is that, ancestry.com that tell you where you're from, but they don't know. So I say all that to say, because I want you all to help with the clarification, because you know. And so the first thing I want to know from you guys is what inspired you to come to Colombia. But before I do that, Anthony just jumped in the call, and I'm appreciative of it. So Anthony, I'm gonna give you a moment to introduce yourself. So Ibrahim introduced himself and Max introduced himself. So I welcome you, and I'll give you a moment to just give you a short introduction of yourself, and then we'll go into that first question.
All right, guys. Good afternoon to everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I'm Anthony. I'm also from Ghana. I've been here for almost 5 years. Yeah, I think I came a year after Luis, and we also met at one of the, what do you call it, orientations.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Yeah. Currently, I'm living in Pasto, like working in one of the universities around here. And I think this is a pretty good meeting that we can actually share some ideas and other stuff. So I'm surely in right now.
Oh, I'm excited, man. And so so the question for my first question specifically, and well, I'll actually lead off with Anthony. You kind of alluded to it, so we'll start with that. So you all told me where you're from, but what inspired you to come to Colombia? Because I mean, if we go back to Pangea, Africa and Colombia was connected, and so technically the continents were connected, so there might be sort of like way back connections. But what was your inspiration to come here? So I'll have Anthony go first, followed by Max, and then Ibrahim.
Okay, great. So personally, I actually finished my university education in 2015. And after that, I actually worked for a couple of 6 months in like the Ministry of Agriculture in my country. Before, a friend of mine told me there was this opportunity to come to Colombia and actually teach English. I was like, it sounded good to me. So I actually took it and applied for it. And the main motivation for applying was actually to travel outside, like to have a feel of how it is, because the world is big, you know. You don't have to be born in one place and die in the same place without knowing anything about the other part of the world. So that was my principal like motivation, like to go out and explore other parts of the world, like different cultures, because Latin America, I've read a lot about it, but I haven't really experienced it. So I feel like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to use to explore like the other continents. I applied for the position and I got it. And actually, when I was coming, my parents didn't like I accept the idea of me going to Colombia. They were thinking Colombia is one of the most dangerous countries in Latin America, you know.
Yeah,
because
Pablo.
of the drug.
Yeah, that's true.
Because
That's
of the
true.
drug stuff, like the cocaine, like those cartels and stuff, and the paramilitary stuff. Like they have like pretty bad history when it comes to like war and violence. So my parents did actually allow me, but I was like, okay, life is adventurous. If you don't want to adventure, if you don't want to feel it, then what are you in for? You just want to stay in one place and die in the same place without knowing other parts of the world. So I managed to convince them, and they were like, okay, then it's your life. After all, back in home, like my parents are really conservative about like the kind of things and decisions you make in your life, because they always influence our life and decisions that we make for our future, you know. So I managed to actually convince them, and here I am. The first time I actually came here, it was a bit like mixed feeling, because at that time I couldn't even speak any Spanish, not even like ¿cómo estás? No joke, bro. Seriously, I have to be walking around with my phone and stuff, but we managed to at least overcome all the cultural differences and like communication barriers and stuff. So it's 5 years and we are still in Colombia enjoying the goodies of the country. And I really appreciate every moment.
Cool. And Max, what about you, man?
Man, I think I had the same similar experience like Anthony. I came on a SENA project. SENA is basically one of the vocational institutions in Colombia. So I think at the time, the Colombian government had this bilingual project to actually make the country bilingual. So they actually sought for the help of native speakers, but they wanted to have that kind of international beauty. So they included people from all parts of the world. So, in Africa, especially in Ghana, like after your university education, you you have to do like a 1 year mandatory service for the government. Because the reason being that when we're in school, when you go to public university, the government actually subsidizes your fees. So it's sort of like a payback to the government. So we have to do that 1 year national service, and you get some kind of allowance for that, but it's not like something you can live on for a long time. So I did that service, and I saw that opportunity of coming to Colombia to teach. And actually, I had some other options, but you know, um, the option from Colombia actually caught my attention, and I applied for it. I had it. I had admission. They sent me my documents to apply for the visa and all that, and then bingo, everything was set to go. But like he said, most of our parents in Africa, they influence our decisions, and um, like we are brought up to actually listen to our parents. Like when they say yes, sometimes they even decide the kind of woman you have to marry.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, it gets to that level where like you might not even know the family. You might be at home. They bring, oh, you have to marry from this family, so or you have to marry from that tribe. So yeah. So when the offer came, I really wanted to, but they were like, nah, it's a dangerous country. We wouldn't allow you to go. And I had to convince them. I told them like it's an educational project. It's not like I'm gonna deal in drugs or I'm gonna deal with any kind of inappropriate activity. So at the time, my uncle actually works for the UN, but he was based in Australia. But he comes down every Christmas for holidays. So I actually showed him all the documents, and he went through with me, and then he actually decided to convince my parents that it's something legit, so they can just give me the green light. So with that being said, my key motivation coming to Colombia was I felt like I needed some platform to show who I am, not just as a Black person in Africa, but I can also have that platform where I can contribute my quota and prove to people that there is something great in being Black or coming from Africa. And also I wanted to actually have that opportunity where I can represent my country wherever I go. And I felt like coming to Colombia was going to give me that platform or that leverage where I can speak for myself and also stand for my country. Because a lot of people have so many doubts, and I feel like sometimes in our life, seeing is believing. So when you come into contact with a person one-on-one, you can actually ask all the questions and you can get the information from firsthand. And I can clear all those doubts. And I started doing that when I started teaching in Colombia. Most of my students, they've been asking me a lot of questions about Africa. And I feel like if I didn't have the opportunity to be in Colombia, I wouldn't, or they wouldn't also have that opportunity to have that sort of education about my continent. So that was one of the key motivations coming here, where I can get a platform to represent myself and also my country. And also, I feel like not just the monetary aspect, I've always been that person who always wants to volunteer. And I feel like language learning or language is one of the best way we can unite the world. Everybody can come together. And talking about that, we were like almost 150 volunteers from around the world. So we had people from so many countries in Africa. We had people from Kenya, people from Cameroon, people from Ghana, people from Nigeria, people from Egypt. And we all had that piece of us that we can bring to make like something great. And there is a saying we always say in Africa that little drops of water makes a mighty ocean. So when we come together, that's the strength. There's beauty in diversity. So I was also happy to be part of that. And when we create that diverse picture, that's how we can unite the world. You know, there's a lot of craziness, a lot of um, division. So when we come together as Black people, as white people, or people from different backgrounds, that's when we can connect, you know, the dots. And I feel like coming to Colombia has given me that platform to play a role in uniting the world or sharing my knowledge or my country with other people. Yeah.
Awesome. And Ibrahim, what about you?
Right. So I love what both of them were saying. Actually, yes, the diversity is amazing, but I have to be honest, like I just came here because I was just traveling around. All right. I just like to travel. I volunteer in many countries. I do many projects with different organizations. And then I found an opportunity to come to South America. Actually, it was to Ecuador first. And then I taught English a little bit in Ecuador. And then a friend of mine told me, hey, there's this opportunity in Colombia. And I was like, hey, what the hell? Let's try Colombia. Yeah. And so I came here and then I left and then I came back. So it was kind of just, you know, spur the moment kind of thing more than anything else. But to what Maxwell was saying, you know, yes, I do get these questions, you know, when you're in class, when you're talking to somebody new, whatever, you get these questions. Oh, Egypt is in what continent? And what do you speak? What language, what religion, what thing? And it's being African and at the same time Arab and Muslim, you get a lot of confusion, okay? So answering these questions have like definitely a good opportunity to clarify and to engage people with things that they would not have learned if I was not here. So to what Maxwell was saying, I totally agree with that as well.
So it's awesome that this call is literally doing what Max and Anthony and Ibrahim have said. It's bringing people together. So we have Razak who's joining us right now. He actually did a call with me before to talk about Ghana, the year of the return, specifically to help Americans learn, because Black Americans, you know, we know everything, right? But I want to make sure they're fully educated. So Razak, welcome to the call. If you would do a quick introduction of yourself and where you're from, and then we'll go into the next question.
All right, thank you, man. It's good to be back on here, man. Good to meet all these other guys. I mean, I've never met Maxwell. Maxwell, good, nice to meet you. Yeah, man. So my name is Razak Salifu. I'm from Ghana. I am currently living in Pasto, Colombia. It's like in the south of Colombia. And yeah, it's good to be here.
All right. And so now specifically talking about like the next point, right? So I asked why you, well, actually, Razak, can you answer why you came to Colombia? And then after you answer that, then we're going to go to the next question, because everyone said why they came. So we want to know why you came here.
I came to volunteer. I came to teach English, basically, and I stayed.
So with that, you know, the thing that I like to ask is, what are some of the things from your home nation that you either wish was in Colombia that would help Colombia, not make it better, because obviously you all like the country enough to be here, but what would be something from your home nation you wish that would be in this country, or something from Colombia that you would wish that people would have in your home nation? So we're going to start with Ibrahim, followed by Razak, followed by Anthony, and then ending out with Max. So go ahead, Ibrahim.
Well, you know what, like you said, we all like it enough to be here, but if there are like a couple of things I wish that were here, you know, Colombia is a beautiful country, but they do not sell it good enough. The image, the perception of this country in the world is not that good. So we, like in Egypt, we sell kind of the tourist idea, right? Come see the pyramids, come see the temples, come for the beaches or the diving or whatever. And wherever you travel in the US, in Europe, in Japan, you find people selling packages to Egypt. There are pictures in the airports and stuff like that. So that's one thing I think Colombia can work on, plus the infrastructure to support the increased influx of tourists that actually have been coming in over the past few years. All right, so that's one thing I would love Colombians to do. For the other part of it, Egypt, like here my colleagues have said, is not just Egypt, Africa is conservative somewhat. And Egypt is even more conservative as a Muslim country, majority Muslim country. So I would like to have a little bit more, let's say a more liberal society, all right? And Colombia is a more liberal society than Egypt, in terms of relationships, in terms of social taboos, in terms, even as a democracy, there is a lot of corruption here. There are a lot of problems here, but still, when you go to Egypt, it's basically a dictatorship. It's basically a closed off kind of government. People don't really talk politics on social media and in the street because they're scared. So the kind of freedom that people enjoy here is something that we are still lacking back home.
All right, and Razak, what about you, man?
I totally agree with Ibrahim, 100%, man. But one thing, like that I would like Colombians to do is the time management thing. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, you are right.
I know. I mean, like back home in Ghana, we are not like I wouldn't say we respect time 100%, but we manage it real well. You know what I mean? But like here in Colombia, it's a different scenario. Like I don't know if it's cultural. I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but and it's affecting me. Like right now, I arrived to the meeting at 5 p.m. I don't know for some reason I thought the meeting was at 5 p.m. You know what I'm saying? And
it's all good, man.
And I just think that if they could work on it, they could work on the time management thing. Because people would schedule meetings for like 2 p.m. and the meeting will start at 5 p.m. or 4 p.m. And apart from parties though, like Colombians would show up to parties earlier than that is also another thing I would like that's here that I would like to implement back home. It's just like Ibrahim says, is have people be more open-minded. Like back home, I wouldn't say people are close-minded, but in the thinking, we are just a lot more conservative. People don't say what's on their mind. People are afraid to challenge leadership. So just that attitude that Colombians have of being free-minded, being liberal, being ready to stay or to fight for what's wrong. That's one thing that I would like to have back home that I really like here.
Well, sorry, if I can just add something here, it's just like for me, because like in Egypt in 2011, we had a revolution. In 2013, we had another revolution. And hey, man, we're still under dictatorship. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not only social, it's also political. The fear of authority, the kind of ideas, the conservative society, and the somewhat closed-mindedness. It's just, even after 2 revolutions, you're still dealing with this problem. And you can see that people here in South America and in Colombia in particular are more free. We go out and protest, we do these things, but still, we don't get that kind of freedom.
All right, and Anthony.
Yes. Okay, so I think I agree with all the stuff the guys have said. One thing I would like to add is about family stuff, I know that's mainly about the culture of like both countries, like Ghana and in Colombia, we have different set of cultural systems. But one thing I would say is over here, like in Colombia, we have people that are matured, like after university, they're 28, 30, 35, and they are still living with their families. But back in Ghana, we don't have that kind of system. Sometimes even after like secondary education, you have your freedom to like leave the house and go and fight for yourself. And even after university, it's like obligatory. You must leave the home and go and find your own like life and how to start your own life, basically. And
Really?
yeah, and I actually think that gives us a lot of like advantage to grow as human beings, to grow as like adults. It gives us the responsibility to take care of our own selves and make decisions from when we are young and when we start life. And that is one thing I feel like Colombians are lacking. So because sometimes you could be with like your colleagues, like the same age groups, like Colombian, but you realize our mentality are totally different. The way we think, we kind of matured, and they talk like they're just kids because they've not had that what do you call it, freedom to go out of the family and like experience life themselves and like try to make decisions themselves. They are matured 30, 40, 30, 35 and stuff, but they're still receiving like helps and stuff, like making decisions with their parents. Like everything they do is like in conjunction with their parents. So they don't have that kind of like self, I don't know if I say self-awareness or like ability to,
No, that makes sense.
yeah, to
Yeah.
be able to make decisions themselves. And I feel like in that aspect they are lacking a lot when they come into like group, especially with us, you see. And
Okay.
for the other part, the other thing I would like to implement in my country from Colombia would be like Razak said, they are open-minded, the way they are open-minded. And I feel that is from their childhood because their cultural system is a bit different from ours. I feel like right from when they're young, they give the children like the liberty to express themselves. They give them the authority to do whatever they want to do. But back in my country, we don't have that. If you are a child and for instance, your parents receive, let's say, visitors in the house, sometimes they have to go and lock you in a room so you don't interfere with whatever they are discussing. So we feel like we are lacking that kind of like ability to grow up with that kind of freedom to express ourselves, to be participative in like what do you call this argument and what that kind of things. We don't have it. We lack it, and that is one thing Colombia has like over my country. I don't know. Well, Ghana is kind of multicultural, so I don't know if this applies to other parts of the country, but in my tribe particularly, this is very common in it. So it's one thing I really like to implement. Yeah.
All right. And Max, close us out on this question.
All right, man. Yeah, so I was saying it's probably because we have different cultural systems, and what I see differently is probably, for example, the school system. Like we practice in Ghana mostly like the British school system. So we have a lot of boarding school system where the students have to like leave home and stay on campus for like 4 months, and they go back home only on vacations, just like the university system. But we start from high school, so it puts some kind of confidence in you at a young age that you definitely have to leave home and fend for yourself. And in this boarding house school system, they teach you how to be a man, how to live for yourself, how to survive alone. And we have a funny ritual, like when you give birth to a kid, like we have a funny ritual. I call it funny, but it's something serious back home. But like when they having the naming ceremony of the kid, they have like a machete, and they hand the machete into the hand of this little kid, and that signifies that you have to work to feed the family. And they actually drop like they dip the tip of their finger into alcohol and water, and they drip
Yeah.
it on the lip of the kid, and that signifies that you have to be able to tell the difference between the truth and the lie, right? So these are all like cultural awareness that people get at a younger age, and we grow up with it. And I feel like Colombia, what they can also learn from us a bit is they should be more open to the world. I mean, in terms of language learning, I think they're so um, nucleated when it comes to language learning, and looking at their geographical location, being very close to the U.S. and Canada. They have very good opportunity to develop when they can be bilingual or something like that. Like in Africa, for instance, especially in Ghana, we have like almost more than 50 tribes, and each of these tribes are different. We like I'm from Ghana, but I can speak like 4 different languages in the same country, and this is because like if I'm moving from my tribe to a different department, I have to speak their tribe. And I think it's because in South America, most of the countries here are Spanish speaking, so they don't have that kind of urgency to learn a different language, you know. So and that's like a very big challenge, especially for English teachers here in South America. They don't have that kind of openness to receive um, something new like language learning, you know, um, just being specific. And also one problem we have, I mean, traveling from Africa to South America, you don't find like direct flights. You know, it's not like a regular route for all these airlines. So sometimes you got to transit through Europe. From like when I was coming to Colombia, I had to fly from Accra to Morocco. I had a transit from Morocco to Brazil. And I actually took another flight from Brazil to Colombia. And that took like almost 18 hours, you know? So
Wow.
that's like a long flight. So
Yeah, man.
I think they should be very open. They should be structures like that. They can connect with all the continents. I know probably they don't have Africa on their map, but it's something they can also look out for and they can learn from us too.
So
And
what would you think bring back?
um, sorry,
What would you bring back? What would you take from Colombia to Ghana?
from Colombia to Ghana, I feel like it's the same family idea, you know, that kind of love they share with their family, you know. Like my brothers were saying, we grew up with that fear. I don't know if it's a black thing, but you know, we grew up with that fear for our parents. Like when your mom or your dad is coming back from work, you got to run away and hide, or you got to get something doing. You got to get your hands doing something. Like we always scared to like sit on the same table with them. They don't give us that chance to talk to them one on one. But I feel like Colombia has that kind of you know leverage with their kids, and they can have arguments. They can. I see like Colombians family like going to the mall every Sunday, right from the grandmom to the least person in the family, always being together in the malls. And I don't see that back home, right? There's a lot of divisions, and we grow up with that kind of fear for especially our dads, and because they always want to scold us, they always want to put us to one corner, so we always have that kind of fear. So that's one thing I would take back home, that kind of family love and that kind of affection we can share within our family.
You know, a cool thing that you all have all brought up is about relationships, right? So you've all talked about relationships. And so I think an important question that we all can focus on is, what has your experience been like building relationships here in Colombia and compared to the relationships you have in your home country? Like, have you maintained the relationships in your home country? What is it you say? How do you communicate? What do they ask you from home? And then how have you used who you are to build relationships where you are? So we'll start with Anthony, and then we'll go Ibrahim, Max, and then Razak, you'll be last. So Anthony, start us off. Like, how have you built relationships home and here? And like, how has that sort of shaped you? And then like, what do people back home want to know?
Okay, that's a good question. So in terms of relationship, I really think like Colombia and my country, Ghana, are pretty much different. Like there's a lot of different stuff between the countries. For instance, back home we have like a very conservative system of like building relationship. For instance, if you like someone, you propose, or in the past, in the olden days, you have to tell maybe your parents that, okay, I saw this lady and I love this lady, and maybe I would like to like get a hand in marriage and stuff. And your family needs to go and make like background research.
Okay, hold on. Because now, whoa, okay, I have a question. So you don't date people first, like you don't casually know people. You got to go straight into it. I'm just curious. I mean, I know you're just saying, but I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I'll come back to it. I'm driving to that direction.
Okay.
So, like that's what happened like in the olden days. Like if you find someone on the streets or maybe like in a workplace or wherever and you like the person, you have to first like tell your parents that okay, I found this lady and I like the lady, and maybe if you could go and do some background research about the lady. So your parents will first go and do that, like do some research about the family of the girl. And if everything is okay, then they'll go to the family and like introduce themselves and what their motives are. That was the olden day, but nowadays, like we kind of do our own stuff on the street. So you get, if you find a girl and you like the girl, just propose to the girl. But we still have that kind of conservative system, and the girls are not really open. Like in my country, you can't just like propose to a girl, for instance, like in Colombia, and maybe after 1 week and stuff, you start having some like love affairs and stuff. It's pretty much difficult back home compared to Colombia, yeah. And
Wow.
yeah, so with that mentality, like trying to immerse myself into Colombia at the beginning was pretty much difficult for me, because here they have like different understanding of how to start a relationship and how to build a relationship. Back home, if you propose to someone, like you like someone, you study the person for some while and propose, okay, I want you to be my girlfriend, I want us to be in a relationship and stuff, then everything is understood. You proceed like that. But if you come to Colombia, it's a bit different. Like you need to go out, go on a date, like many times. And they actually, for if you come to, let's say, the romantic part, they are quick to jump into it, like than in my country. In my country, it's other way wise. You have to be patient. You can't just force the girl maybe after a few days or few weeks and stuff. You start like talking about sex and stuff. It's a bit weird.
Yeah.
Colombia,
You go in stages.
yeah, it could be right away. So at the beginning, I was really finding it difficult to like coordinate the two like cultures. I met few girls and I was kind of like a bit reluctant to like driving straight to like romantic stuff, but they were like much eager for us to start everything like right away. And it was a bit difficult for me, but with time I just have to like adjust and like fix myself into the system. So basically that is how it is. That's how it is.
That's interesting. Ibrahim, what about you, man?
No, man, what's
That's
interesting
interesting.
about
I've never
that,
heard
Louis?
of that. Well, I'm American,
Oh yeah,
so we don't do none of
right.
that.
That's like,
I'm gonna let
right, that's
him
true.
go.
Well, you know what? I have to tell you, like, I've been listening from the beginning, like when they were talking about all the social construct, like in Ghana and everything, and it's very, very different from what we have in Egypt. All
Right.
right. So in Egypt, it's kind of more like, yeah, you meet somebody at university, at a coffee shop, whatever, and you date, and then it goes from there. You know, it progresses like
Right.
in many different places. But in Egypt, like society, as a society, you know, premarital sex is frowned upon, right? So if you're gonna do that, you gotta hide it, right? You don't let people know that that's what you do, okay? Because if the girl, if it's common knowledge that this girl is having premarital sex, then that's a problem for her family. It's kind of the
Right.
honor thing, right? So that's a problem. But other than that, the social construct of dating is there. You know, you don't go straight up to the marriage point. But if you are a conservative family, if you are a religious family, the father will not allow his daughter to date. She will date behind his back. That's another story. But but officially, like, you know, it cannot happen until you actually go talk to the dad and you're kind of engaged. And then you are free to socially acceptable, you know, dates, go out. Nobody will tell you anything. But that's the more conservative. The majority of people now, you will just meet somebody at the university, at a work, at a coffee shop, whatever, and you're just going to date for some time and then talk it out, you know, whether you want to get engaged or married or whatever. And like I said, the premarital sex part is frowned upon. But I guess the whole social construct of relationships, even family relationships, you know, father son or father daughter or whatever, is different. Because like when they were like talking, you know, about their own social construct, you know, the tribes, the coming of age ritual with like the machete or something like that, we don't have any of that. Right? We are more like here, you know, families live together, they're going to go to the mall together, they're going to go on vacation together, you know. So and you stay living in your parents' house until you get married. It is not normal, it is not yet the accepted kind of thing in Egypt that you move out of your parents' house when you're 18 or 19, you know. You only move out of your parents' house if you get a job in another city or you get married. If you're living in the same city with your parents, you are definitely living with your parents.
Really?
You know what I mean?
Really?
Yeah.
No, that's pretty serious. All right.
Yeah. It's not normal for kids to move out of their parents' house unless they're married or they're going to another city. You know, other than that, you're living with your parents.
I think like I feel like it's more like a West African thing, you know.
Yeah, I believe that too. You know,
Yeah.
and you know,
Fiyin from Nigeria can talk about that too in their countries.
Yeah.
You know, Nigeria is also a West African country.
So for us, you know, it's like more conservative in some parts, but more, I guess, open in other parts. So that's why I'm saying like the social construct in Egypt is different than West African country or even Central African countries. We are, in this case, culturally speaking, socially speaking, we are more Middle Eastern or Arab rather than African.
Okay.
Okay.
That makes sense, yeah?
No, it does. It makes total sense.
Yeah.
All right. That's interesting.
Well, but geographically, you are African, you know.
No, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you know, Egypt is like they've been categorized as Africans, you know, geographically.
They own the continent. So
They are
exactly.
on the continent.
That's facts.
And I'll tell you what, you know, like Egypt, like the Arab, what I call it the Arab invasion of Africa from what is now Saudi Arabia into Egypt happened around 650 AD. So for about 7,000 years before that, it has been 100% African, you know, culturally, socially, and everything. Like even if you look at some of those pharaoh statues, they look more black than brown. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like right now, I am brown, which is another thing. You know, like a lot of people would look at Africa and say, well, Africa is just like African Americans would say, like all Africa is black, but no. Africa is not all black. There are brown people, there are black people, there are white people in South Africa.
South Africa, yeah, that's true.
So
in Zimbabwe,
in Zimbabwe, like, right. So it's super diverse. Like you cannot really categorize it socially, racially, or put it in one box in any case, right? So after the 650 AD, after the Arab invasion of North Africa, Egypt began moving socially, culturally towards the Muslim Arab culture more than its more African roots.
That makes sense. I mean, I studied Africa for some. Go ahead, Max. I think you were talking, right?
Yeah, I want to add one thing. Like, there's just one thing I remembered about the relationship stuff. So, for instance, back home, if let's say you are in a university and you are a guy and you have a girlfriend, actually you are not permitted to. It's not like you're not permitted, but because of our cultural limitations, you don't have that conscience to bring the girl to the house.
Really?
Like,
no, definitely not.
Seriously, you can't do that.
Nah, you're not gonna do that. Nah.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
And worst of all, to be like a lady, bringing your boyfriend to the house is totally forbidden. You can't do that. But if you come back to Colombia, it's something like very normal. I dated like some girl back like some years ago, and the first week the girl was like, "Oh, okay, vamos a mi casa." I was like, "Holy shit, what is that?"
Dude, I understand. Yeah, I understand.
Back home, you have to sneak into the girl's house.
Like, we getting married
You
already.
don't even go to the girl's house, bro. What you gonna do there? Like,
you probably have to stand outside of her house, in front of her house, or 2 blocks away, and call her. You meet.
if she has a brother, you just use the brother as a decoy, you know?
You don't do that. You don't.
That would be impossible in Egypt as well.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
like
Razak.
Colombia, you have that kind of liberty, like for girls to just bring out their guys to their home, and even the first time I arrived in Pasto, like our mentor, we went to visit the mentor, and she was there with her daughter. And all of a sudden, she just said something. Oh, my daughter is going out with a boyfriend right now. I was like, what the fuck?
Man. Well, it's funny because based on what you all are saying, then Razak, you pick up, and then we'll introduce Fiyin into the conversation. So I know you have a different situation than everyone anyway. So what about you? What is what about building relationships here for you, man? What's your take on it? Oh, and Max, I didn't mean to skip Max too. I didn't mean to skip you, Max. Max, you're after Razak.
Okay.
Um, building relationships out here has been difficult. More so just because of the cultural differences. So like for me out here, it has been tough till I met my lady. Because you would meet ladies, and all they just want is just something casual. And like coming from Ghana, like my mindset about relationships is something serious. Like I don't go into this just be casual, you know what I mean? But then you meet someone, and that's why I say just cultural differences. Because you meet someone for the first time, you put your all into it, and this person just like, no, bro, like slow down, man. You know what I mean? And then it also works. It also works on both sides, because sometimes ladies here, like building relationships with ladies here can be so difficult because they become a bit too clingy, you know what I mean? And that also just scares me in particular in some cases, because for me I have to build something with you, like I have to build a relationship with you. But if it's the first date and you know things are happening already, I'm like, okay, you know, you know what I mean? But then also the difference between the relationships that I've had here and back home is out here people don't hide their feelings. Like they tell you what they want from the beginning. But back home you'd probably meet a girl, instead of the girl just telling you I'm just in it for the sex, she just pulls you, she makes you struggle to win her love, her so-called love, and then after 2 days she just dumps you, you know. But then yeah, or she goes, yeah, or she realizes you are not rich enough to be with her. Like it happens. But then out here, like girls tell you from the beginning, like what they want and what they don't, you know. So that's just the difference in the experience for me.
And Max, what about you?
Man, for me, it's been easy, like for real, because I feel like that kind of foreign touch that I bring here is what actually attracts them. You know, like for me, I would say my problem initially was probably the language barrier. I couldn't speak Spanish, so it was a bit difficult to get into like a conversation with a Colombian girl or with anybody I meet here. But you know, I took it upon myself to like study the language. You know, I mean, study their customs, how to pick up a girl here. But I mean, not to even go into that. But for me, building relationships in general wasn't or hasn't been that difficult for me, and especially my profession here in Colombia, they always want to know you, right? And I think they cherish teachers. They love, I mean, teaching profession. So they always want to have a conversation with you, and they always want to get to know you. And what my friends from Ghana were talking about, I mean, the family accepting the kind of lady you getting into that relationship. I think it all boils to the fact that they always want to define the kind of relationship you're going in. And no parent wants like the daughter to be just played around with, you know. They want to have like a good husband for the kid, because you know marriage is like a big thing in Africa. Like I don't know if you've seen some African marriage videos from Nigeria, from Ghana. Like they don't joke with that. It's like an institute, like a whole institution back home. So all these parents, they're a bit protective of their daughters, and they don't want, people to just come around and play with their daughters like that. So they always want to build that kind of protective cover around their daughters. That's why they're very, very protective when it comes to that. But for me, building a relationship in Colombia in general, it's been a bit easier. And, they have this mentality or this perception about Black people being able to dance, So, like, whenever I walk into a bar, I go to the club, like, I start dancing. I have people, like ladies, just giving me a hand to dance. And that's where I built up from. And, you know, like, that's like, we'll leave that for another conversation. But, that's where
Yeah,
it
yeah,
goes. And, I get into the entertainment stuff, and they get to know me, and I just built up the relationship from there. So the only problem I had initially was the language barrier, which is the Spanish, so I can communicate with them and get to know what they like, what they don't like, taking them out on a date, or we going on the cinema, up to the cinema, or we going somewhere like hiking on the weekends or something like that. That's what. And I studied what these girls like, because it's different back home. Like they were saying, like back home, a lady, if you're dating a lady, you need to have something, like materialistic speaking. You need to own a car. You need to have like I mean, you need to be economically, sound, or you're not gonna get like the kind of lady you want. But here, if I feel like it's more like they show the love, like they don't care what you have. Like, some ladies will actually consider that, but if they love you, they love you. It's not about what you have or where you're from. It's just that kind of vibe or that kind of energy you bring, and they probably like want to feed off the energy you come along with. And for me, that's been my relationship. Like I go with a different type of energy, and they just vibe with that energy I come with, and that's how I build my relationship. Yeah.
Okay, so we need to take a pause. That's the end of part 1. Come back, check us out for part 2.